Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the Orns 10-minute take on Watford nil, Millwall 2. That was the game, and that was the result at the Vic today. An abject performance by a Watford side who, once again, choose not to turn up to these matches. I think that there is something now with this team where they seem to not turn up to these games, and it's as if they've drawn a lottery to see which games they shouldn't turn up for, particularly at the Vic, because we've seen this again and again and again. We saw this against Hull. They didn't really show up against Hull a few weeks ago. They didn't really show up against Coventry City a few weeks ago. And there have been other games at the Vic this season where Watford have not been anywhere close to into the game. Now, look, they've had more wins at the Vic this season than they did last. That was always going to be on the cards. And generally, their play has improved at Vicarage Road. But there have been far too many games still, where Watford FC on the pitch, this men's team does not show up in these games. And we saw it today against a Millwall side that had already pulled our pants down back in October with a 3-0 hiding at the Den. You would have thought that this particular game, this game, would have been the one that Watford used for revenge, that would have given them the motivation to say, right, we're going to do this lot today and properly dust them off. That was not, however, what we saw today in the game at the Vic. In fact, what we saw was a Millwall side motivated to do the double over Watford, and that they did. I told you in the Orns Christmas Eve focus that Millwall were going to come in and try to frustrate Watford and attack them with set pieces and do the dirty work and get physical with Watford, and that was what their game plan was going to be. And that was exactly what Millwall did today. They absolutely did all those things. They frustrated Watford, and they absolutely made this game a misery for Watford. And without real effort, you could tell that Millwall had more desire. You could tell Millwall dominated this game today. They had at least 61% of the possession at one point. And I think at the end of the game, their statistics evened out, but Millwall ended up with more possession anyway. They dominated the game. 2-0 is not an accurate reflection of how this game was for Watford. Watford were absolutely stomped on today at the Vic, and there's no excuse for that. These players did not turn up. Only one player did, and that was Daniel Bachmann, who made some excellent saves in this game. In fact, made a hash of a clearance and then made up for it with a brilliant save to stop Watford from going down 1-0. But he could not stop a goal in the 22nd minute in the game when Vogelshammer scored the goal that gave Millwall what was going to be 3 points eventually anyway. And that was the killer blow. A Millwall side who thoroughly dominated the first half and the second and more than deserved this game. And that you can have no complaint at all with the manner of the Millwall performance. But you can have everything to say about how poor Watford were in every area of the game today. Midfield was an especially tricky problem. The defense was disorganized. The team play was disorganized. The ball movement was way too slow. There was not enough cohesion between the back line and the midfield. And furthermore, there was not good movement at all off the ball by any Watford player. And then the few forays that Watford had in this game into the Millwall 18-yard box, Watford players like Ismail Assar and Keenan Davis held onto the ball far too long, didn't take their immediate shot on goal. They did not find the pass that might have been available, or they just held onto the ball long enough to have it dispossessed from them. This is not a Watford team at the Vic that you can feel secure and confident about. This is the Watford team that doesn't have confidence at home in some of these games, that has an on-off switch, a Jekyll and Watford switch, that causes this team not to even show up to some of these games. This was the game today where Watford FC had a good opportunity to tell Millwall, right, you bloody our noses in October, we're going to now thump you in December. But that did not happen at all. In fact, the only glove that Watford laid on Millwall today was Hassan Kamara shoving down a Millwall player to the ground. That was the extent of Watford's fight today. It was a fight that will cost Watford 3 games without Hassan Kamara. It was a fight that will cost Watford a few games without João Pedro, who had to go off injured. It was a fight that Watford, with an already thin squad depleted by injury, is now going to have to dig deep in for the next game against Swansea this weekend. Watford just were not at the races today. Watford did not even enter the pitch today, as far as I'm concerned. And this was a very disconcerting performance, given the fact that there was revenge on the cards here, and that the revenge alone would have given and should have given Watford motivation to play much better than they did 2 months ago. And they lost in-round loser in that game. And in this Millwall game, they lose João Pedro. What is it about playing Millwall this season that we have injuries to our best players? What is it about playing Millwall this season that Watford players run scared? Completely intimidated by Millwall today. And on your home pitch, no excuse for that for me. There's no excuse for that performance. And I don't care if they had 19 days off. You can't play like this against a team when you've had time off. You can't play like this off the back of a win. You have to continue to push your momentum and push your confidence. You had all the players you had 9 or 10 days ago when you defeated Huddersfield Town. And this is the Millwall side who had less points away from home than any other team this season in the championship, except for Huddersfield Town, a team that we just beat. How did Watford allow this to happen? Well, again, they didn't turn up. Millwall's game plan worked to perfection. The execution of their long balls, the execution of their set pieces. The second goal came from a set piece in the game, and that finished Watford off, put Watford to bed. Good night. And their toughness in midfield. They overran the midfield. Watford did not have anything good in the midfield today that counted, and Slaven Bilic did not make the appropriate adjustments when he saw that midfield was being overrun. Now, a lot of this has to do with the silly sending off, the absolute atrocious play of Hassan Kamara, who now has to force the manager to move and play the game differently than how he might have planned. And I'll get to Hassan Kamara in a moment or two. But Slaven Bilic today got this wrong tactically in a number of areas. I don't think he adjusted quickly enough. I don't think that he provided more midfield cover quickly enough. And once the sending off happened, he was forced to do things he really didn't want to do. And yet, for a large part of this game, Watford was still in the game. Even into the 70-some-odd minute, when Watford were down 1-0, the game was still there. But the problem was that Watford going forward did not convince me, and they didn't look confident either. If you're holding on to the ball that long, and you've got the ball and you're running into the box, take a shot, bother the goalkeeper, lay a glove on the goalkeeper, at least give the Millwall defense something to think about. But Watford did not do that today. You had Ismaila Sarr holding onto the ball for far too long. Keenan Davis did the same thing. And dribbling and dribbling and running and not putting the ball into the box, not taking a shot on goal, not giving the Millwall defense anything to worry about. Millwall had an easy time today, just like they did in October. 2 games and no Watford pressure at all. None in 2 games against the same team. Usually, that doesn't happen. Usually, except if you're playing against Manchester City. The second performance against the team you played in the league is usually better if you played poorly against them the previous time. Now, that's not always true. But certainly when you play a team you only played about 8 weeks ago, for you to lay this bad an egg against that team the second time around, in fact, worse, shows you that either you're intimidated by Millwall or you simply did not turn up to this game. And I think it's both. Didn't care. Maybe you had too much Christmas turkey. Maybe you drank too much eggnog. Maybe there was one too many kisses under the mistletoe. I don't know what it was, but all I know is that this team was not sufficiently prepared to play this game. Slaven Bilic can tell me all he wants about the preparation for long balls and all the rest. The fact is, these players were missing in action today when we needed them most. There was no leader on the pitch. There was no cohesion on the pitch. There was no cohesion amongst this team in general. Team spirit was not there. I think these players played very isolated football today, very selfish football, and the most selfish person of all was Hassan Kamara. Last season's player of the year has laid a major egg in a number of these games this season for your and my beloved Watford. And the thing about Hassan Kamara that frustrates me the most, and he's a good person off the pitch, terrific person. But on the pitch, sometimes he loses his mind. And that's a very sad thing. And I mean that with the greatest respect. And I'm not even talking about mental health here. I'm talking about his focus and his concentration and his temperament. I'm specifically talking about his temperament. His temperament is very poor. He has been sent off twice this season for Watford. Once against Burnley back in August in the 81st minute, and we had to hold on for dear life to get that game won. And then today, with the game already out of our hands, losing 1-0, he gets sent off again. He has also had a yellow card accumulation this season, which meant he missed one game from that as well. So on a cards alone, on red cards and yellow card accumulations, Hassan Kamara will miss a total of 7 games. That's shocking. That is not discipline. That is absolute madness. Hassan Kamara cannot be off the pitch 7 games this season on cards alone. 2 straight red cards and a yellow card accumulation. That is a player who is ill-disciplined. That is a player who is not playing good football. And that is a player who has allowed his temperament to get the better of him. I said that Millwall would do this. I said that Millwall would frustrate Watford. I said this in the Orns Christmas Eve focus, as I mentioned. And everything I said came through. I thought Watford were going to win the game. I thought they would. I said that 2 days ago. I thought Watford were going to win because I thought that this was the game that Watford would mark for revenge on the calendar. Oh, no. I was completely wrong. But I really should have known because this team has pulled this stunt before. It is the Jekyll and Watford show. And this show has really run tired with the fans. I think Watford fans at large, Watford supporters at large, are absolutely sick of the no-show performances. No-show performance today, no show against Hull, no show against Coventry. Those are just the home games. I can talk about the other games where they no-showed. The no-show against Blackpool. I can talk about the no-show against Bristol City. The no-show against other teams in this league. And Watford FC, this men's team, has disgraced itself today. And Hassan Kamara has been very selfish today with his performance and his actions. You were already down 1-0. You already had an injured man in João Pedro having to go off, forced off. And you have a thin squad, injury hit, and that's what you choose to do. Shove down a Millwall player. Very, very well done. That's just brilliant. And now you're out for 3 games, and your teammates will have to do this without you. I really wish that players at this club would use their maturity and some smarts and not be thinking about getting your own back on some Millwall player who's already up 1-0 on you to begin with. Has anybody spoken to Hassan Kamara about his temperament? Has anybody spoken to any Watford player about resisting the urge to get involved in scraps and scrapes? Generally this season, Watford actually have been rather disciplined in terms of the cards they get. But when you're not playing well, when you're not showing up, and you resort to pushing players on the floor, shoving them down to the floor, you make it harder for yourself than Millwall did today. You make it harder for yourself. And Millwall, well-deserved victory. Credit to them. Their goals were good, opportunistic. They did everything that they wanted to do. What was Watford's game plan? That's what I'd love to know. You saw Millwall's game plan. I told you what it was going to be. What was Watford's game plan? Where was Watford's game plan today? They didn't move the ball quick enough. They didn't make use of their possession, and they didn't have enough possession to make use of, and they got overrun in midfield, and the manager didn't correct that until later on. And even then, it still was not enough. It will be very interesting to see how Slaven Bilic puts this team out for the game against Swansea. And I do hope that João Pedro comes back soon. Very disconcerting to learn from Tommy Mooney that he had seen João Pedro in a boot and on crutches in the second half of this game. And so that is a big concern for me. It's the left ankle, the one that gave him problems before, that he was missing a game or two for. And now it looks like it has been a serious injury. We'll see. We'll find out, I'm sure, in due course about just how bad the injury is for João Pedro. Obviously, if you are in a crutch, if you're in a boot and on crutches, you are not playing the game against Swansea City. I think there's safe to say that. But let's kind of, before we even go there, and it seems obvious that he's not going to play in that game, but let's look and find out what the news is on João Pedro's injury. And I do pray and wish that he is not severely injured. I really hope that he is not severely injured, and I pray for his speedy recovery. I really do. João Pedro has been the one leader that we've had on the pitch this season who's given an effort, and nobody gave an effort today except Daniel Bachmann. I mean, there were moments from TDB, and there were moments, I guess, from Ken Sema, but really, this really wasn't a performance to even look at now, because, again, it was a no-show from this team, and if it wasn't for Daniel Bachmann, this could have been a 5-0 Millwall win. This has been the Orns 10-minute take.